Astad Deboo has been perhaps one of the most photographed dancers in India, perhaps amongst the most, articles written. Um, I don't know anybody who's worked across the range of creative industries, from fashion to product design to textiles to historic locations with music and sonography and, of course, choreography and puppets and martial arts like he has. But whenever I met him, I would ask him, Astad, where is your biography? Or where is your autobiography? And he would say, nobody's interested. And I said, I refuse to believe that. So finally, it took Astad's passing to have a group of close friends and family saying, let's just do this. And to do this, I have the amazing, somebody I call a dear friend, and somebody who learned Bharatanatyam in California is Ketu Katrak. Ketu joining us from the University of Irvine in Southern California. Ketu, welcome to our conversation and our day-long celebration of Astad's 74th birthday.
Hello. Can you
Hi.
hear me? Hi.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
So, Ketu,
Yes.
of course, you're a Parsi, so nobody grows up without hearing of Astad Deboo. Okay? And I have this book here, Contemporary Indian Dance. Okay? And it has Astad on the cover. Yeah? And I know, Ketu, that when you wrote the book, Astad was already an icon. So many younger people were already coming onto the Indian contemporary dance world, the scene. And I was wondering, why Astad Deboo? I mean, hasn't he been photographed enough? Hasn't he been on the covers of enough magazines? So why would another book of contemporary Indian dance choose Astad on the cover? And that was a thought that was not just going on my mind. I know many Indian dancers were thinking that. So then I thought, okay, loyalty, Ketu, and loyalty to somebody that she really admired. But we're coming back to his biography, and that's why you're here, Ketu. We're talking about it. You may not have expected to have been sort of drafted to write the book. Yeah?
No.
Yeah.
No, it was quite a surprise.
Yes. And you've just finished a book on an amazing South African artist, Jay Pater. And here you have this project. So there's so many strands to Astad, Ketu. You've written about him in this book. You've also collaborated with him for a Marg book on contemporary dance. And now you're going to write his biography. So even before you start, what are some of the impressions that you already have because you've worked with him?
Right. I think that, first of all, I was really daunted and also honored when Gulshan approached me. And I remembered that when I was working on my previous book, the Jay Pater book, Astad had come to Irvine. We were working together on the Marg issue. And that was one of my best times with Astad. He spent a whole week and so on. And at that time, he had hinted a little bit, like perhaps you could do something, on my work, my life. And the seed was planted by Astad in a way. And at that moment, I couldn't take it on because I had to finish the other book. So on the heels of now that book being published and this request kind of falling into my lap, it seemed like Astad himself was directing it, from the spirit world. And it's been many, many occasions since his passing that I have felt his presence. I think that many of his close friends perhaps have, and, a photograph of him will suddenly fall out from nowhere, or the little Manipuri dancers that he had given me, they suddenly come into view. So I see this as a labor of love. And it is a very daunting task. As you said, Astad had such a long career, like a 50-year career in dance, plus his friendships all over the world, his generosity and the ways in which he made human connections. I've talked to people like Sunil Shanbag, Ratan Batli Boy, and others, in the early days, how even then, without the internet, without an iPhone, Astad would actually send cards for birthdays. He would send postcards from wherever he was. And so here was a really exceptional human being to try and take the time, the trouble, the generosity to just connect, with people that he knew, that he loved. Um, so, trying to incorporate these various strands, as you say, is going to be a challenge, of course. And I'm trying to trace it as a life in dance. So, basically, I mean, his dance was his passion. It was his full love, throughout his life. And I'm trying to trace that, from the earliest work, for which we mainly have still pictures, but then talking to some of the collaborators who have worked with him, even in the early days, there is a lot that comes to light about his spirit, his adventure, his kind of feeling of adventurousness, in trying out certain forms of what we would not even call dance in those days, It was more in the realm of like performance art or something in your face, And he was willing to take those risks, And even though I think, as Sunil Shanbag told me, he always had a loyal following, a loyal fan following, And sometimes even they were pushed to the edge, like, okay, Astad, this is too much, But he just forged on, So I'm going to try and, depict that in the biography. I think his major characteristic, as others have also mentioned, I got to see a few things because I was asleep when you guys were having a great time in California. It was nighttime for me. But, his generosity of spirit, I think that is really an important marker of his personality. And that comes through with some of the collaborators that I have spoken to. And even I've spoken to Hema as well, in terms of how he would be so open, to receiving and observing and looking at what he was interested in. And then really almost from the back, trying to participate, to improvise, to kind of support, And I think that quality really helped him with a lot of his collaborators, that he could really be present, he could be a support person, not that he didn't have to be just the star. And I think that was an amazing quality because when you collaborate, if one person just wants to be the star, that cannot be an equal kind of collaboration. So, his work with the Manipuri dancers, then his work with, I spoke to Yukio Tsuji, the Japanese musician, and had an amazing interview with him, his love for Astad and his tuning into the kind of spirituality that Astad could bring into the movements of his fingers or into his face, was something that Yukio said, he took me with him. And, that was just incredible to kind of hear that. Even when I spoke to Dadi Padamji, and Dadi said, Astad was the first one who came to him to say, I'm a dancer and let's do something together. Until then, Dadi is a master puppeteer and he's famous all over the world. But to actually bring dance into his puppetry work was something that he does credit Astad for. So, these kind of nuggets of information that are kind of out there, I'm hoping in the biography that they will kind of come to light. The other challenge for me is that, as you know very well, I'm a scholar, and to come into this different register of writing is not easy, to kind of include a lighter tone, to bring in the voices of others, and, still be very respectful of the work itself. So how it's presented will, be a challenge for me. But
because I know now you have a publisher,
yes.
but you also have a deadline.
Yes.
Yes. So
this is not the kind of book that I think we've talked about that too. I cannot take 5 years, 6 years as I did for the Jay Pathar book, which also involved going to South Africa several times. And this is the kind of book that they do want the first draft by April 2022. And I'm going to try my best, to honor that. And then, we'll see what comes from that first draft. And, there's such a wealth of not only information, but photographs. And that's another challenge, in terms of how to present them in a way that sort of integrates into the biography. So I will also be talking to you at length. We haven't had time to do that yet, because you
But I was
presented.
wondering, because I know that Dadi sent me some wonderful early clippings, of Astad in Kathakali costume somewhere out of Mexico, or in the early years, face painted and in his unitards, and the kind of reviews that came out, La Dance de Land, from India.
Yes.
So, but in your writing, the article in the Contemporary Indian Dance book, you say that in the early years his dance was not Indian enough for the West,
Yes.
and in India it was too alien to even connect with. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, we know now. We've always known that it's been a very difficult road for him. Yeah, to really hold that strength and just walk. And you also say that he loved Ekla Chalo Re. He identified with Tagore's and added, and walk tall. Walk by yourself, but walk tall. Ketu, you worked with Astad on the Marg book, right? I mean, you collaborated. What was his level of involvement? What were his interests about what the tone of the book should be, who should be included, and what were his hopes for contemporary dance in India?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that he was very interested in promoting. At the same time, he felt that there wasn't enough opportunity for training with the kind of rigor that he would have wanted, for dancers to really go into a contemporary style. Because whatever you do, you have to have some base in something, whether it's classical or yoga, or your body has to be trained. And often he would find that that was not happening. So he felt constantly disappointed by people who said their work was contemporary. So he had a different kind of standard, I think, given his own kind of journey and his, I would call them almost punishing kind of bodily rigor poses, the balancing poses, the twirls that could go on for almost 10 minutes.
The bends, the spinal bends.
The back bends, the forward bends, So it was a particular Astad Deboo signature, and one couldn't expect every other dancer to imbibe that, Apart from that, he just wanted to see a well-trained body. And I think with his travels in many different parts of the world, he did find that. And he was also frustrated that in India, we don't have those kinds of supports for contemporary dancers. I mean, because we have such a rich classical tradition, and government is only interested usually in promoting that. So even though he got the Padma Shri and was recognized as a pioneer in contemporary Indian dance, that was like a one-day event, he said. After that, the government
He was
backed
60.
up.
He was 60 when he got the Padma Shri.
Right. So, I mean, that also tells us some part of the story. So to do this Marg issue, again, it was something that I was surprised that he wanted to work with me, because I said, I'm all the way here in California. This is on contemporary dance in India. It's not about the diaspora, which I also wrote about in my book. But somehow, I don't know, his mind was like, you will be the right person. And I think he was relying on my ability to work with him, and also my ability to kind of take in the writings, to be able to edit them, to be able to follow up with particular artists. And he was extremely generous with his time. You send him an email and he responds like yesterday, So he was very much there, whatever part of the world he was in. And then I think I heard Hema say he himself volunteered to come to Chicago and pay his way there. And he did the same thing. He said, I'm going to come to Irvine. What would be a good time for you? I'll pay for it, because we need to sit down for at least 3, 4, 5 days to decide on, the final kind of structure of that magazine. Also decide on which artists to approach, to write about their own experience with the contemporary. So I think we had, you wrote for us, Vikram Iyengar wrote a wonderful piece. We had Mandeep, and some of the younger generation also talking about their own experiences. And then Astad, of course, had a wealth of contacts, which I did not. So he would make the first contact with many people. Vikram Iyengar's contact actually came from you, which we were really grateful for, But others he knew, and he could make the first intro, and then I would follow up. So that's kind of how it worked. One of my fondest memories is, you've also been to my house, we went for a walk by the Corona del Mar ocean. And, Astad, when he's not working, he is just fully there for you. And he is so fun-loving. What shall we eat tonight? What are we going to cook? He loved food, and he loved just to live, So those were just delightful times together, and kind of balancing the work and having fun, That was his personality. So the magazine went through some ups and downs, in terms of coming together. But eventually, there was a launch within that Marg organized, and I was not able to be there, but Astad had some of his artists also perform for that. So it was, I think, an important statement to show that contemporary dance in India was a valid genre, was a valid form, and that several artists were, going on this journey the same way or in different ways than how Astad did it, in the 60s and 70s, when he just took off and hitchhiked and went to Europe and the US, he went to Japan, he went to South America. Not everyone has that kind of spirit to be able to do that and to really be open and learn from everything that he saw. Not just the dance and the music, but also just the ways in which those cultures functioned, how people lived, how people interacted within families. So you have this almost like a Renaissance man, who's interested in the arts, but also in the whole culture, in the whole of life. So I think that came out, the Marg issue came out in 2017. Then the collaboration with Hema happened in 2019. And I'm pretty sure Astad's search, even Rama has written about that in her piece on Marg that she focused on Astad's journey. He really wanted to have that sense of belonging within the Indian soil, which is where he came from, He could have lived abroad, many artists might leave and say, okay, I'm going to do my own work elsewhere. He was connected very much to his family. He wanted to be in contact with that, but also with India, And he talked about how if he could work with the highest level Indian musicians, that was a great honor for him. So when he worked with the Drupad singers, this was in 1990, it was the first time he got the opportunity to be at an Indian dance festival at Khajuraho in 1990. So that was a big deal for him, to be able to be invited to that. And I think that was one step in the direction of him becoming more and more, accepted, a known figure, within the Indian context. But it was a very long and hard journey, I think, for him to kind of reach there, And
I know it's kind of ironic, Ketu, that he had to pass for the biography to become catalyzed,
Yeah.
that because I've always wondered, I mean, what do you mean no publisher is interested? I was always after him because the photographs are amazing. He's got, my God, his life is amazing. And I would think that publishers would want an original story, an original story. Everybody is regurgitating the epics and doing new mythological writing on the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, but here is an original story of, a wanderer, somebody curious, and a voyager, an adventurer. But I'm so glad that you are actually doing it. I'm very curious because, as you said, you're a scholar. This is going to be a very different book. I'm hoping that to serve Astad, it's not a hagiography, that it really brings out the humanity and
Yes.
the many facets he has, because in India we just tend to just want to praise all the time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think I'm really looking forward to it because you have a deadline,
Yeah.
and so thank you so much, Ketu, for joining us, and I think it's a fitting conclusion to a day that honors Astad's 74th birthday. I know you are a very, very proud Parsi, and I think that you try to live by, certain very important codes, and I think you saw that in Astad, you know, the humanity and the sense of empathy that he showed for people from all walks of life, not just for royalty and nobility and the important people. So
Right.
thank you so much for joining us, and let's all join together and say happy birthday, Astad, because
Yes.
he is today among the stars.
Yes. Thank you, Anita. You were amazing to put this together. And there could have been no better honor for Astad. If you just compile the whole day, that itself would be a biography of Astad, I think. So it's wonderful. You were the one who had invited him early on to the other festival,
Yes,
when he wasn't that well known. And, you gave him a platform. And you also had the insight to see what he was doing. So, he had some people within the Indian context. You've also seen a lot beyond India. And so, there was some reference point for you. And
yes,
I think that also meant a lot to him. And yeah, working with the street children, with the hearing impaired, that kind of humanitarianism, I see it as, part of a Zoroastrian faith, or, many other religions also espouse that. But Astad never saw anyone as high caste, low caste, those kind of distinctions, which are sadly very much part of the Indian fabric. He just treated them as dancers, and expected a lot from them. And that was just incredible, the ways in which he could get them to respond to him. So, yeah, we wish he would have lived for another 20, 30 years and he would have done amazing things. But this is what we have. So we wish him all the best in the spirit world, and keep dancing, keep twirling, and make all the gods up there happy. And look out for each one of us. Thank you. Thank you,
thank you.
Anita. Thank
Thank you.